Hi, everyone. Um, I think it's really interesting that I'm following Cara because I studied the same module as her last year in fashion marketing, a fashion history module, and that's where I got the idea for this project. This is my dissertation project, looking at how the experiences of Black people in post-war Britain influenced their fashion and style. So, as I mentioned before, the inspiration for this research came after studying a module in fashion history. We learned about trends like the ones that you can see on your screen, but I was really intrigued by pictures like this, featuring Caribbean Windrush migrants coming to Britain after World War II to help rebuild the country. Their style and their history is so under-researched, but I knew that it was worth writing about, and I turned it into my dissertation topic. So to give some context, despite being invited here and sometimes even recruited to come here, Black people were received quite harshly. Many were denied jobs, housing, and even basic respect because of their color. They would go on to face systemic racism from the police, the government, the education system, and I chose to include the picture in the top right. That's a picture of a Nigerian migrant, David Oluwale, who was repeatedly abused and eventually murdered by police here in Leeds in 1969. So as I undertook this research, I found that I could separate my findings into three categories. The first, dressing to maintain dignity and boost self-esteem. The second, dressing to reinforce Blackness and reject Eurocentric beauty standards. And the third, dressing to find community and belonging after being rejected in white spaces. So I'm going to give a really, really brief history of British fashion from the 1950s to around the 90s. So when the Windrush migrants first arrived in Britain, some white people were quite shocked as they imagined that Black people would dress like savages. But these people wore colourful, tailor-made, fashion-forward clothing, many seeking to make a good impression in the mother country. And we saw that these styles were maintained even after facing hostility and pretty much poverty in Britain. Many were determined to keep their dignity through dress, as you can see in that picture in the bottom right corner, which is actually titled Dignity in Poverty. As for Black youths, most were rejected from white clubs and spaces, so they created parties of their own, imitating the sound system culture of Jamaica. And here they could be free and listen to Black music, which wasn't aired much on British radio or TV. On the right there, you can see a picture of a sound system crew wearing the smooth fashion styles of the Rude Boy, the most notorious criminals of Jamaica. This style was adopted by Black youth in Britain, I think, to boost their self-esteem, as many wore this style even if they weren't involved in crime, like the Jamaican Rude Boys. A growing population of British-born Black people resented the way that their parents had tolerated injustices and racism with dignity, as I discussed earlier. And they preferred activism and formed organizations such as the British Black Panther Party. Many of them educated themselves on history, racial politics, and African culture. And in these pictures, you can see some people wearing the typical style of the American Black Panthers, and others, despite being of Caribbean descent, actually wearing West African clothes and demonstrating this. Rastafarianism also became really, really popular amongst Black British youths in the 1970s. It offered a Black savior in replacement of the white Jesus that had been preached by colonizers, and an African citizenship to all Black people. Now, for Black British Caribbeans who had suffered the identity loss of Africa due to slavery, of the Caribbean due to the Windrush, and then of Britain due to their skin color, this religion really made sense. And the styles that followed often featured the colors of the Ethiopian flag in tribute to this Black savior, Haile Selassie, and natural clothing fibers and hairstyles such as dreadlocks to outwardly display their Afrocentricity. And in the top left corner of the previous slide was Barbara Blake Hannah, who was Britain's first Black TV presenter. She eventually left British TV and Britain as she couldn't handle the racism that she faced. And she had what she described as her spiritual awakening as a Black person when she converted to Rastafarianism. Later on in the century, a lot of Black youths were influenced by Black musicians from America and the Caribbean, such as the ragamuffin musicians of dancehall music from the Caribbean here, and hip hop musicians from America. And you can see some styles born in Britain in this slide. So what effect did this research have on me? A British girl who knew no Black British history until she decided to teach herself, who has been accused of being too Black, accused of being too white, and despite being born and raised here, has never quite felt that she fits in. For one, it made my life and my identity as a Black British person make a lot more sense, and it allowed me to understand other Black British people a lot more as well. It made me very proud of my community and our contributions to British fashion. Without the Rude Boys, you wouldn't have had Teddy Boys. Without our style, creative talent, and music, British fashion and creativity would look very, very different today. But lastly, it made me feel quite disappointed, disappointed that other people probably wouldn't get to learn this amazing history. It is missed out of our curriculums, our syllabuses, mainstream literature, research, even real life dramas like The Crown. When I watched The Crown this year, I was really, really upset that they tackled apartheid in South Africa, but didn't tackle the racial tensions that Britain faced at the exact same time. And that's why I titled this presentation, The Silenced Black Body. This is a quote that I took from another researcher who experienced the same disappointment as me. I think that regardless of race or ethnicity, if British people are kept ignorant of this history, a week's diversity training later on in life won't really do much to change anything. I think that understanding this past can do a lot for the future, just as it did in my own personal life. And that's why I think that this topic is so important. Thank you.